Have you ever noticed how silence has become something rare, almost impossible to find? We live in a world that celebrates noise, haste, and constant agitation. Yet there is something happening in the shadows of this collective restlessness. Some people are disappearing not physically but energetically. They are quietly distancing themselves from the world, withdrawing from empty conversations, meaningless commitments, and obligations that do not nourish the soul. And perhaps you are one of them, feeling this strange need to retreat, to create distance between you and everything that once seemed important. This movement is not weakness, it is not giving up, it is not pathological loneliness. It is something much deeper, something that awakened souls intuitively recognize as necessary for their own spiritual survival. Alan Watts, the philosopher who dedicated his life to translating Eastern wisdom for the West, understood this phenomenon better than anyone. He realized that distancing is not escape but awakening. It is not abandonment of the world, but recognition that the world that was sold to us is a carefully constructed illusion, a theater where everyone plays roles they never truly chose. Awakened souls begin to feel a visceral discomfort when immersed in the frenetic pace of modern society. They perceive that conversations have become mechanical repetitions, always revolving around the same superficial themes, as if there were an invisible script that everyone follows without questioning. Work, money, status, appearances, endless comparisons. And in the midst of all this, something inside them cries out for meaning, for depth, for truth. This cry cannot be silenced with distractions, no matter how sophisticated they are. Awakened souls realize that the culture of perpetual entertainment is a form of anesthesia, a way to keep people too busy to ask the essential questions. And when you start asking those questions, when you begin to question the dominant narrative, something inevitable happens. You become incompatible with the system. Not because you are rebellious by nature, but because your consciousness has expanded beyond the limits that the system can accommodate. And then the distancing begins, not as a conscious decision, but as a natural movement, like the tide that recedes before returning transformed. This silent distancing of awakened souls does not happen dramatically. There are no announcements, no confrontations, no public manifestos. It is a gradual process, almost imperceptible to outsiders. You simply begin to decline invitations you would have automatically accepted before. You realize that certain conversations drain your energy instead of renewing it. You notice that many of the relationships in your life are based on social convention, not genuine connection. And slowly, without guilt, without the need for elaborate explanations, you begin to create space. Space for silence, space for reflection, space to hear the inner voice that has been muffled by decades of conditioning. Alan Watts often spoke about the importance of not confusing the map with the territory, of not accepting concepts about reality as if they were reality itself. And that is exactly what awakened souls are doing when they distance themselves from the world. They are rejecting the map that was given to them, refusing to live according to coordinates drawn by others, seeking to experience the territory directly, without intermediaries, without filters, without the distorted lenses of mass culture. The world interprets this distancing as antisocial, as depression, as failure to adapt. But awakened souls know that they are not truly distancing themselves from people. They are distancing themselves from falsehood, from theater, from constant performance. They long for real connections, for conversations that touch the essence, for relationships where masks can be set aside. And these connections are rare, precious, impossible to find in spaces where everyone is performing edited versions of themselves. That is why silence becomes so valuable. In silence, you do not have to pretend. In silence, you can finally hear what your soul has to say, instead of just repeating what has been programmed into you. And in that silence, something extraordinary happens. You begin to realize that the loneliness you feared so much is actually a form of fullness. That being alone does not mean being abandoned, but being complete with yourself. That the constant need for external validation was merely a symptom of an internal disconnection that is now being healed. Awakened souls discover that distancing themselves from the world is paradoxically the deepest way to reconnect with true life, the one that pulses beneath the surface of the social spectacle. And there is a reason why this movement is happening now. at this moment in human history. Never before have we had so much technological connection and so much human disconnection simultaneously. Never before have we had so much access to information and so little wisdom. Never before have we had so many entertainment options and so much inner restlessness. Awakened souls feel this contradiction in their bones. They realize that something is deeply wrong, that the promise of modernity has not been fulfilled, that all the technological convenience has not brought the promised happiness. And instead of continuing in collective denial, instead of medicating themselves with consumption and distraction, they choose to face the void. They choose to silently distance themselves from the world, to confront the fundamental questions that society desperately tries to avoid. Who am I really? What has true meaning? How do I want to live the days that remain to me? These questions cannot be answered amidst the noise. They require silence, contemplation, courage to be alone with your thoughts without the usual crutches of endless distractions. If you have made it this far, you probably recognize something of yourself in these words. You are likely also an awakened soul, feeling this call to distance yourself, to create space, to seek something more true. And if this resonates with you, leave a comment below saying which city you are watching us from. Subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of awakening with us, and leave your like if these reflections touched something deep within you. Now let's continue exploring why this silent distancing is not only valid but absolutely necessary for the evolution of consciousness. Alan Watts used to say that we try to use thought to solve problems created by thought itself, and this paradox is at the heart of the modern human condition. Awakened souls see this with crystal clarity. They see how society offers solutions that only deepen the original problem, like an addict seeking more of the substance that has imprisoned them. Buy more to feel better. Work more to be more valuable. Consume more content to fill the void. And at some point, something inside awakened souls simply says enough. Not aggressively, not with anger or resentment, but with a serene clarity that recognizes the futility of continuing to feed a system that was never designed to nourish the human soul. This recognition is simultaneously liberating and lonely, because it means that you can no longer participate in collective illusions with the same naivety as before. You see through the veil, and once you see, you cannot look away. And then, the distancing becomes not only desirable, but inevitable. This silent distancing of awakened souls from the world manifests in countless subtle ways. Perhaps you stop obsessively consuming news, realizing that most of it is just theater designed to keep you in a constant state of anxiety. Perhaps you begin to refuse to participate in gossip, physically feeling how these conversations degrade your energy. Perhaps you lose interest in accumulating more possessions, recognizing that each additional object is another weight, not a liberation. Perhaps you distance yourself from social media, tired of observing the careful curation of lives that reflect no reality at all. Each of these movements is a step toward authenticity, a gesture of refusal to continue living according to externally imposed standards. And as you distance yourself, something miraculous happens. The space you create allows your true nature to emerge. You begin to discover genuine interests that were not planted by algorithms or marketing campaigns. You start to hear intuitions that were muffled by constant noise. You begin to recognize the natural rhythm of your own energy instead of forcing it to conform to arbitrary schedules. Awakened souls discover that distancing themselves from the artificial world allows them to inhabit the real world more fully, the one that exists beyond human constructs, the one that has always been here, patiently waiting to be noticed. There is a profound irony in all of this that Alan Watts would surely appreciate. Awakened souls distance themselves from the world not because they disdain humanity, but because they love it too much to continue participating in systems that diminish it. They see the extraordinary potential that each human being carries, and that potential being systematically suppressed by social structures that value conformity over creativity, productivity over presence, appearance over essence. And so they withdraw, not in judgment but in preservation of their own sanity, preservation of the ability to feel deeply in a world that promotes emotional numbness, preservation of connection to something greater, that cannot be quantified or commodified. This silent withdrawal is an act of peaceful resistance, a gentle yet firm refusal to continue feeding with your energy and attention that which does not serve true life. And the more awakened souls withdraw, the more they realize they were never truly integrated into the system to begin with. They have always been strangers in this strange land, always felt that something did not fit, and now they finally understand why. They were not made for this world of surfaces and speeds. They were made for depth, for contemplation, for connection with the mystery that sustains all existence. This process of withdrawal for awakened souls is often accompanied by a period of mourning. Mourning for the loss of relationships that cannot survive transformation. Mourning for the loss of the old identity, the one built to please others. Mourning for the loss of innocence, for the impossibility of believing again in the comfortable narratives that once offered false security. Alan Watts often spoke about the need to die before you die, to allow the constructed ego to dissolve so that true nature can be revealed. And that is exactly what is happening in the silence of this withdrawal. A symbolic death, a shedding of everything that was false, a process of purification through subtraction rather than addition. Society teaches us to seek more, to accumulate more experiences, more relationships, more achievements. But awakened souls discover the power of less, the freedom that comes from letting go, the clarity that emerges when you remove the layers of conditioning instead of adding more concepts about who you should be. And in this shedding, there is a stark beauty, a quiet dignity that does not need to be performed for anyone. The world may call this escapism, but awakened souls know it is exactly the opposite. They are escaping the collective fantasy to inhabit reality. They are leaving the theater to experience life directly. What seems to be a withdrawal from the world is actually an approach to the truth. And this truth is not comfortable, it is not convenient, it does not offer the instant gratifications that modern culture promises. But it offers something infinitely more valuable: authenticity. The possibility of living according to your essential nature, rather than according to a script written by forces that do not have your best interest in mind. Awakened souls recognize that the price of conformity is the soul itself, and that is a price they are no longer willing to pay. So they withdraw silently, without fanfare, without the need to convert others or justify their choices. They simply move toward what is real, what is true, what resonates with the deepest core of who they are. And in this silent movement, there is a more radical revolution than any public protest, because it is a revolution of consciousness, and those are the only ones that truly transform the world. As awakened souls silently withdraw from the world, they begin to perceive patterns that were previously invisible. They see how society operates through constant fear, keeping people in a perpetual state of anxiety about the future or regret about the past, anything to prevent them from fully inhabiting the present. They see how the educational system was designed to create obedient workers, not critical thinkers. They see how mass entertainment functions as a narcotic, offering superficial stimuli that prevent any deep reflection. They see how consumer culture turns every aspect of human life into a commodity, including spirituality, including identity itself. And the more they perceive, the more they understand why withdrawal is not optional, but essential. It is impossible to see these things and continue participating as if nothing has changed. Expanded consciousness makes unconscious participation impossible. And then, silence becomes refuge, a sanctuary where awakened souls can process everything they are seeing, where they can integrate perceptions without being bombarded by more noise, more propaganda, more attempts to mold them back into the old form. Alan Watts had a wonderful way of describing this. He said, "We are trying to live as if we were isolated egos in bags of skin, separated from everything else, competing for scarce resources in a hostile universe." But this is a complete illusion, a story we tell ourselves that creates unnecessary suffering. The truth, he insisted, is that we are the universe experiencing itself through billions of different viewpoints. We are not separate from nature, we are nature. We are not separate from each other, we are different aspects of the same fundamental consciousness. And awakened souls feel this truth viscerally when they silently withdraw from the constructed world and spend time in the presence of the natural world. There, away from concrete and schedules and artificial hierarchies, they remember. They remember that they are part of something immensely greater, that their individual existence is simultaneous with the totality of existence, and this remembrance changes everything. The concerns that once seemed monumental reveal themselves to be trivial. The fears that once paralyzed reveal themselves to be unfounded. The loneliness that once terrified reveals itself to be impossible, because how can you be alone when you are one with everything that exists? This silent withdrawal allows awakened souls to rediscover what truly matters, and they often find that it is surprisingly simple. It is not the impressive career, it is not the robust bank account, it is not social approval. It is the ability to be present with what is, without constant judgment or desire for it to be different. It is the ability to appreciate the ordinary beauty that is everywhere when you pay enough attention. It is the depth of a few genuine connections, rather than the superficiality of hundreds of acquaintances. It is the freedom to live according to internal values rather than external expectations. It is the peace that comes from accepting impermanence rather than constantly fighting against it. Awakened souls realize they have spent most of their lives chasing things they did not really want, trying to impress people they did not genuinely respect, postponing real life to some hypothetical future when they would finally be allowed to rest, to simply exist, without the constant performance. And the silent withdrawal is the refusal of this postponement. It is the decision to live now, authentically, even if it means disappointing the expectations that others have placed upon you. There is a loneliness on this path that cannot be denied. When you awaken while most are still asleep, you inevitably walk alone for periods. The conversations that used to fill your time now seem empty. The entertainments that once satisfied now seem childish. The goals that once motivated now seem meaningless. And for a time, you may feel deeply isolated, questioning whether you made the right choice in silently withdrawing from the world. But then something happens. You begin to find other solitary travelers, other awakened souls who have also withdrawn, who are also seeking something more true. And when you recognize each other, when your eyes meet, and there is that flash of mutual recognition, you realize you were never really alone, that there is an invisible community of awakened souls scattered throughout the world, each doing their silent work of consciousness, each contributing to a transformation that is happening on the fringes, away from the spotlight, away from established centers of power. And this community does not need institutions or hierarchies or dogmas. It exists in resonance, in the spontaneous recognition of kindred spirits who have chosen the road less traveled. Alan Watts repeatedly reminded us that we are not something that comes into the world, but something that comes from it, like a wave comes from the ocean. And the awakened souls who silently withdraw from the constructed world are simply returning to the source, reconnecting with the fundamental reality from which they were never truly separated. This withdrawal is not the end of anything, but the beginning of everything. It is the return to presence, to authenticity, to a life lived from the inside out rather than from the outside in. And as more awakened souls make this movement, as more people refuse to participate in collective illusions and choose to inhabit the truth, something inevitable happens. The world begins to change, not through political revolutions or technological advances, but through the silent transformation of consciousness. One person at a time, one choice at a time, one present moment at a time. This is the true power of silent withdrawal. It is not selfish isolation, but the cultivation of clarity that eventually radiates, influencing everything around effortlessly, without agenda, simply through authentic presence. And perhaps this is exactly what you need to hear today, that it is okay to withdraw, that you are not failing, you are evolving, that the silence you seek is not emptiness, but fullness, that awakened souls have always walked a different road, and you are simply finding yours. There is nothing wrong with you. There is everything right. The world may not understand, may judge, may question, but you do not need external approval to honor what your soul knows to be true. So quietly step away when you need to. Create the space that your expanded consciousness demands. Trust the process, trust the wisdom that is emerging from within. And know that every step on this journey, even the solitary ones, even the difficult ones, is bringing you closer to who you truly are. If these words resonated deeply with you, if you recognize yourself as an awakened soul quietly stepping away from the world, leave a comment below stating your city. Subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of awakening and transformation with us, and leave your like so that this message reaches other souls who need to hear that they are not alone on this path. The silent revolution is happening, and you are a part of it.